Hello, welcome to another weekly podcast at Azure Centric. Once again, we are here with my good friend Andrew to talk about this crazy busy week that we had on Azure. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Probably they are listening to us, and for that I thank you for listening to us and all the subscribers and all the channel, all the help that you guys are giving to the channel. And it's really great to hear your feedback that you guys are liking all of these news, the way that we comment the news and associate the news to your world, what is important, how you can apply or not can apply. It's really good to hear the feedback, the good and the bad. It just makes us better, right, Andrew? But
Absolutely.
this week, I don't know what happened on Microsoft. I think
Well, I have a theory. I think it's the pre-Christmas push,
oh
and I
my,
can only. I'm kind of making a bit of an assumption here, but I think the Microsoft teams are getting ready to help Santa to deliver toys to all the little boys and girls around the world,
oh my
and all
God.
little drops of Azure sweetness. So I think, with that said, we had there was over 40 updates
Yeah,
for sure. My
yeah,
math is bad, but it might be closer to 50.
yeah. But I just want to tranquilize you that you are listening and seeing this podcast. Don't forget to subscribe before I forget to mention that, to just help us and to just like and comment all of this. And if you want to share among your peers, please do. It's the
Absolutely.
idea is
Yeah.
to spread this to just even more, and to just make this as an informal way that you can be updated. Because if this happens and we were caught not out of surprise, but we caught on surprise that they release, I think, over 50 or over 40 or whatever was it, the math, since last podcast that we recorded. We are not doing this live, so we have to record before. We will probably do this live on the New Year's. That's a good feedback that
That's
we
right.
got. We will try to.
So that's a good segue because I kind of now you're going to find out live with the rest
Yeah,
of the world here as we record this, but I have actually, as you know, last week we were playing with a platform for live streaming, you
yeah.
and I have actually got mine all set up now. So
Oh, okay.
uh, we are
Close to
but
that.
mere days away
Yeah,
from doing some additional live stream events, and I think there will come a day. You're probably right in the new year that we will do some special live
yeah,
event things, and we may do some recordings, of course, still because I really love how you can use SoundCloud and kind of listen offline. It's really helpful. I know here in Calgary, when I take the train and I'm going to someone's office, so I'll travel from my home, I go for a bit of a walk, and then take the train for about 20 minutes, get into downtown, and walk to the office. And it's really helpful to have the offline
yeah,
download. If you have, things like YouTube Premium or SoundCloud, which is free,
yeah.
there is a line in the middle. There was a semicolon there. Maybe I didn't take enough of a breath. YouTube Premium, uh, semicolon, and then a free service, SoundCloud, to download offline on
Yeah.
your mobile. But nonetheless, I think it's really fun, and I really love where we're going. And again, I'd love to want to echo your words and say thank you to our listeners and subscribers.
Absolutely.
And absolutely subscribe. We hit a top 10 this past week, which you actually caught me by surprise. Never on my radar did I think we would hit a top 10 for anything like that.
Yeah. As an Azure
But maybe the
podcast, we
best
did.
dressed
And
list,
we,
right? But
and it's with your help, so thank you. So just to use the shameless plug of Andrew regarding this podcast, it's not only on Spotify, on SoundCloud. You can see on Spotify, on Apple Podcast and Google Podcast. Just search for Azure Centric. Just go there and you will see We made it to the 10 top 10 Azure podcasts that you want to follow with our fans of Microsoft and other IT professionals and MVPs as well. So that's thanks to you.
It's quite an honor. Quite an
honor. I'm very humble to do that, and it just gives you a little bit more work. So we have a very long podcast. Let's start. Let's dive into it.
Yeah.
Because
so first up we have let's see, did I get this right? Harness analytical and predictive power with Azure Synapse Analytics.
Yes, you can read.
Kind of a fun update because it's really the unification of all of the different things, right? So it unifies the experience, unifies the analytics, brings data teams in, and kind of mixes in some machine learning as well, right?
Yeah.
So we're really starting to enter now the graphical implementations of big data. So I know down our list, somewhere down there, we need to forecast. We need a supercomputer is what we need to do all the forecasting for these updates this week. But we have some really cool updates about KQL and kind of removing the need to learn specific languages and making these data analysis tools more generic. Yeah. And less niche skilled.
Exactly.
Which I think is important. There's a big emphasis on bringing in all kinds of different people, bringing in different career paths. You and I kind of earlier today, we talked about people who use Power BI and maybe business analysts, right?
Yeah.
So, we want to bring in as many people as we can into the Azure ecosystem to use those products and analyze this data.
Absolutely.
And this is a big step for that.
It is.
So I think that's about all I can say.
No, we have a lot more, but we don't have time for that. We don't want to make this podcast. Well, I think we beat the record last week. We don't want to beat the record constantly. We don't want to bore to death all our viewers and subscribers and listeners. And especially you that you are listening right now. But this is cool. We already start talking about Synapse, the previous podcast last week. This is another way, as you're starting to see all of these podcasts, that we are moving away, or we're moving forward, not moving away. We are moving forward into this evolution that we are seeing, and it's another way. It's very simple. I'm not an expert on machine learning, on AI, as Andrew, I think it isn't as well. But we like to play with new tools and be able to have code free. I'm not usually when you're talking about AI. If you step a little bit back, we're talking about learning Python. I'm not a Python guy.
Exactly.
I can do a little bit, or I can do Terraform. I can do PowerShell. I can do a little bit of Java, .NET, but Python, it's not my wheelhouse.
See, yeah. So VB.NET. You're talking about my neighborhood, Java and Python. It's been.
So you live on VB.NET? I didn't know that we have a neighbor that in Calgary.
I have done a little bit of VB.NET, but not a whole lot recently. I try to stay away from it when I can. As you may remember, I did start my career as a programmer in VB6.
And then you just upgrade your career. I'm just kidding. I love developers.
Brand new. It's the first day I've seen Azure.
Yeah,
I thought we were talking about beautiful vistas at first.
Oh,
but,
don't talk about
Vista. Here we are,
that's
data
a taboo.
Center technology.
Who knew? That's taboo over here. Let's move on. Okay, we have a lot of talk. Let's move on. Azure Automation. Oh my God, what we can say? Automation is ruling the world. So now it moves to Norway East. So, and this is a good way to just show to everyone that Azure is global presence, and it's really fun just to see how they are moving away with all of this with all of these new regions and everything, right? So Azure Automation is now available on Norway East region. So it's not all the services are available in all the regions, right?
Well, absolutely, right. So yeah, and that's why I think you and I, we try to mention when a service hits availability preview or general GA in a newer region when they publish these announcements.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's cool about Azure Automation, of course, is the scalability, right? So you do it once and apply it many thousands of times. It's the whole premise of Azure. And the whole idea is being scalable, scaling up, scaling down, scaling in, scaling out. All of these kind of core, what's the word I'm looking for, Marcos? Kind of core ideas. Of scalability.
And automation allows to do that and allows to automate a lot of those processes that you need to do it, right? So it's another thing. But talking about northern, in this case, Northern European data centers, here comes a new one. Welcome to our friends of Denmark, because very soon, I think this is close to Lapland, where Santa is, right? If I'm not mistaken, if my geography, it doesn't say.
There's a lot of competing theories on where Santa really lives, and is it Saint Nicholas? Is it Nick? Is it Santa? No matter what he's known as around the world, the important thing is Azure's establishing new data centers.
Exactly, and he's going close to Santa. So again, Denmark, it's on development. I think this is a very exciting news that they will have a region in Denmark. And another thing is, this is an Azure data center. It's not one of those partners. It's a fully Azure data center. So it's managed by Microsoft. And that's the part that I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, and one of the things that gets me excited, even though we live in Alberta, fantastic province, by the way, excellent country in Canada. However, I am a big fan of having multiple sources of things. Just like, we don't want to have one network feed to our home. Tell us, I'm talking about you. Come on, pick things up.
I have news about that.
Renewable energy.
Yes.
Right. I know you have a special thing that you're excited about.
Oh my God.
I'm still waiting for them to do my neighborhood.
Okay. Yeah.
That said, we talked last week about Sweden reaching 100% renewable energy, if you remember, a whole week ago. But now in this announcement I saw for the new region they're going to build out in Denmark, they are also going to be 100% renewable energy based. Yeah. Really cool stuff. So this, solar, wind, and they're going to measure it. They're using Azure IoT, Azure Sphere, all these Azure technologies to tell us about the different metrics with their electric feeds. That's freaking awesome. It is. I mean, this is what it's about.
And it's a good standard just to see that it's not only on the existing data centers that Microsoft have, but on the new ones. Now this is a new standard, standard of be able to just doing 100% renewable and everything. It's really motivating to just continue. And again, I think we talked this about 2 or 3 podcasts ago or 3 weeks ago, that the spread, when we're talking about that awesome blog post of our good friend Mr. Rusunovic, the CTO of Azure, that we have over 60. So when we redoing this, we have 61, because this is a new region that is being brought to life, that is in development, right? So let's move on to the next one. I'm not saying that this is not interested. It's just because we have a very, very long list. We have about over 20 updates to cover, and we are only on the 4th.
Exactly. Yes, and we have to keep it under an hour this week. That was a long haul last week.
Yeah. So we will try to resume a lot of things, but there are a lot of topics that we are passionate about, and we will apologize in advance. So
exactly,
let's
15 minutes is the target, 1 hour is the reality, right? So IT time.
at least for us. Public preview on Azure Data Explorer dashboards. This is an October update,
so this is
right?
the preview for the October update. So, here we are in December. They've done the development. Their October update is now pushed into preview tenants. So if you're using ADX, Azure Data Explorer, I know it should be ADE, I think, maybe, but okay. So they've added cascading filters and clickable URLs and tables, which is actually really cool. And again, kind of these updates to me are all pushing in one direction, and that is better usability for less technical people.
You just stole my words.
Clickable links. Yeah, so I actually go the other way. So on Twitter this week, there was a question published, and I'm going to not remember the name right now because that would be really helpful. One of the Microsoft pros, one of the programmers on one of the teams had asked, do you still use Windows Notepad? And I had to weigh in. I don't answer a lot of things on Twitter, but I did answer that because, yes, I do. I use it every day, mainly to remove formatting. One of the things that frustrates me is you try to paste in a link and it automatically hyperlinks it. It drives me crazy. Just give me the URL. If I want it as a link, I'll make it one.
You know one thing?
But again, we're not normal users, right?
Yeah.
Then this is part of the challenge.
Regarding that, interesting or not, I see that tweet as well, but I was about to reply because I don't use anymore a Notepad or Notepad++. I use now because, and especially when I did upgrade to the Azure Centric blog, through the new CI/CD and using all serverless services and Azure DevOps and everything else, I started to use a lot of Markdown and use Visual Studio Code for that. So now my notes and everything else is on Visual Studio Code, and I use that a lot. I don't know if it's the best way because Notepad is a very essential and very basic text editor. But Azure, what I found is with my Visual Studio Code, I was able to perform everything. And if I'm really interested on that, I can save the document, and that's the beauty. I save the document, and when I save on that extension file that I want, the magic happens. And that's the part that I had to learn Markdown on the last months to just, and that's the way that I use for example, and this is a very good segue, right? That we have for the next one, that is the Grafana. Grafana comes into as a query editor on Data Explorer in public preview. So
exactly,
it's the way that you can, and we were talking about this before, is the way that we are not experts on, or at least we are not DBAs, that we have long experience of querying and optimizing queries and everything else. And even for the person that want to explore this, like we want to learn a little bit more, this is very cool because Grafana Query Editor, you don't need to know the Custo query language.
Custo query language.
Yeah.
So I remember last year being on a flight out of Calgary. I think I was flying to one of our client sites that you and I had together last year. And I was watching a video on Pluralsight from Tim Warner, one of my favorite trainers. Actually, he and yourself, definitely my inspiration for looking at being a Microsoft certified trainer.
Thank you.
I know I'm going down like a third path here, but bear with me. I promise I won't be long. Yeah, okay, that's a lot. But I think, for me, it's Custo query language is one of the things that can hold other people back. And one of the things that I've learned over the years from you and Tim Warner is that we shouldn't let lack of knowledge hold us back. And it can sound silly out of context, but again, we can go and learn things. When you're spending time commuting or, on the train, if you're on a plane, whatever, maybe on you're on a bus, whatever, just watch a video, listen to a podcast. And I've actually been really lucky that I've been able to kind of soak up that knowledge from different training courses. I find reading textbooks doesn't work for me. So watching videos with people that I can kind of relate to a little bit, and I feel like communicate things well to me, that really works. And it's one of the things I love about Microsoft Learn and Pluralsight. Both really good kind of video-based and interactive resources. But enough advertising for other companies.
That's okay.
So
this is an unsponsored podcast, so that's
we're
okay.
Definitely unsponsored. Yeah. So this is just all 100% personal opinion. Yes. Right or wrong, take it for what it is. It's just us having a chat on a regular day. That's all it is for us.
It is.
And it's an honor that our listeners allow us into their homes and offices, so we do appreciate that. Yeah. So I'm saying thank you. Anyhow, with KQL, again, the Grafana query editor update for ADX, it's another step that removes the requirement of knowing the query language specifically to be able to build queries. So now we can do things graphically, and again, removing barriers for technical skill sets in Azure.
Yeah.
Really cool, because it's going to allow more people in consuming data, running analysis, getting data out. It's really easy to throw data into storage accounts these days. Yeah. Super easy, in fact. But it can be difficult to filter that data in a meaningful way and get something out of it.
Absolutely.
And this is another, it's like there's so many challenges. We could have a whole special episode just on data itself.
Yeah.
But
as we can have one on Azure Functions. And talking about Azure Functions, you show me a very cool way, because all of this that we are doing weekly, it's a lot of preparation to just see what we're going to talk about it, like we did this, especially this week. And our friend playing around with Azure Functions, I have to say, it just built a way that simplifies our work. So basically, it grabs all the feeds that we have and that we put over there, try to just being more content driven, just for our listeners, just for you in this case, that you are listening and viewing our podcast. And this Azure Custom Functions or Azure Functions Custom Handler, it's now general available. And I think it's what you use, right? If I'm not mistaken, to just doing that. So can you explain a little bit more what it did?
Sure. I didn't think we were going to get called out on that one today. No problem.
This is a full of surprise, my friend. Welcome to Azure World.
So, no shocker, I turned to my good friend PowerShell when I had to solve this problem of information overload, and how can I deliver it to us in a way, again, it's easy to collect data, but how can I make it meaningful and easy to consume? So one of the problems with websites for me is that it takes a long time for me to filter through, click on all the links, open up, in this case, enough tabs to almost crash Chrome. And how can I look at that ahead of time and decide what we want to talk about, make it a bit easier to filter? So as we go on week over week, I'll improve my code, building in kind of logical filters as we make decisions. And I will start to use different tagging, the different categories and things within these updates and blog entries. And eventually we'll get a list that's already pre-refined and just ready to rip. So what I did was I have a function and I have a PowerShell runbook, and they work a little bit in tandem. It gathers everything from the blog site, gathers everything from the update site, takes that RSS, builds them into arrays, kind of writes them back, and then I do some minor filtering, nothing super major yet, but we'll get there. And then spits it into a beautiful little table, puts it in an email. I added a little bit of wrapping with HTML to make it pretty in the email so that it was easy to read. And that's how we get our list of updates. And we actually get it every Friday. And we can, adjust the time. It's just a schedule. And this is the wonderful thing. As the feeds change, if we want to incorporate a third feed, we just do that. If we want to remove a feed because it's no longer relevant over time, then we can remove that feed. And it's a little bit about automating the way to collect all of the information that we present in our podcast together.
Absolutely.
So it's a lot of overhead. One of the things I've really learned in the last year, becoming more and more involved in the Azure community, has been the time it takes to prepare. Nobody prepares you for the time it takes to prepare.
I did advise you that it's not simple, yes. And it's not easy as became an MVP first of all, and then getting that award for the first time, and is even a little bit more complicated maintaining that award because you are one of the 2,000 in the world experts that Microsoft awards you with that. And that's a really honor for me. That's the reason that we are doing this as well, because it's not only the intention again of this podcast. It's not only going to the news, because I'm totally aware that we are not a CNET, that we are not like those kind of mechanism. What we want to do is a little bit different what they are doing, because they just announced. What we want is to put our experience on the field regarding this. That's why we don't select every single news. We select or updates or announcements. We select the updates that we know, that we've been touching, that we've been playing around, and to see how applicable is that to our world of the infrastructure world of Azure, or on the path as well to that site. So we are not developers, as I think we already mentioned that, and you already probably that you are listening and viewing are aware of that. But we are IT professionals that we work every single day during the year on the cloud technologies. And I think that is the difference of this podcast, because we are not only here to just say, hey, Microsoft released this, or Azure is doing that, and we are trying to put a bridge between what they announce and how applicable is that in our real lives. And I think that's the difference, right?
Yeah, and for me, I feel much the same way, because when I read the news, it's nice to kind of understand, what does it mean for me? What does it mean for one of the clients that I work with in the business that I'm working in? And that's where we try to kind of build that bridge and, close the gap about, here's some information about an update that was done, run. When we have time, we go in and we play with that technology, and we try to learn these things as they're released. Sometimes in preview, sometimes it has to wait till it hits GA before we can touch it. It is what it is. But I also see I'm getting the wrap up on the screen there, which is really, because now we have Azure Stack Edge VM support in public preview. So this one's actually pretty cool, right? So it's another step with IoT.
It's not only IoT, okay? And that's the part that I want to clarify. Azure Stack Edge was announced, I think, on Ignite. And this is a very cool device, okay? So Azure Stack is a device that you put it on your end. They are putting everything that is device related to Azure as Azure Stack. You have Azure Stack. You starting with Azure Stack as a rack. That was the first evolution, and now they didn't see that there was so many or so approachable for the customers. And the reality was really expensive. It was a brutal piece of or a rack in this case, and they're starting to reduce that into a smaller footprints. But Azure Stack Edge is just like Satya used to say, is to make the edge, in this case, more intelligent. So yes, it's for IoT. Of course, that doesn't have exactly the same power as the Azure Stack, but the Azure Stack Edge, it was mainly for receiving IoT, AI, and business applications. In this case, at your location. So if you're going to the blog post, and if you click on learn more, you see that you have the two series of Azure Stack. We have Azure Stack Pro and Azure Stack Mini. So, and if you see, those are kind of small form factors that you have of a server, that you have some compute power, you have running Azure inside of it. Okay, you can manage by Azure Arc. And now what they are announcing is, besides having only the services that is available on Azure Stack Edge, now you can run virtual machine. So
exactly. Yeah. So now you can build even more customization with your edge or IoT or other applications. Yes. And it makes it easier to host that VM locally, but still have it fully Azure connected and managed. And like you said, with the Azure Stack 2.0, everything coming out very recently, now Azure Arc is able to also help you reach it much quicker and easier. And
you will see that this is one of the first steps. The next step of Azure Stack Edge announcement is that now availability of Kubernetes, and it goes exactly on the same way that we are talking about. So Azure Stack Edge now, they starting to have this. And if you look at 2 years ago when they launched Azure Arc, the part of managing the extensibility of Azure to on-prem and to other cloud partners or other cloud providers, in this case AWS, for example, that you can deploy exactly on the same way and manage the same way all of that Azure workloads to different areas, on-prem and cloud providers. For example, AWS, they start with a subset of services, exactly the same way that we're seeing over here. So if you noticed, Azure Stack virtual machines were on preview. Azure Stack Kubernetes now systems, it's available. So it's general available.
Yeah, it's GA. That's right.
And then we will see this moving forward, right?
Exactly. So I think we're going to see in the new year a bit of a push. We're going to see a whole bunch of updates coming out in January and February. For things like this, containerization, right? So you're going to see things getting pushed more into Azure Stack HCI. You're going to see it on Azure Stack Edge as well. So I really loved in this one, it says in this update, just click a button in the Azure portal and Azure Stack Edge will create a Kubernetes cluster and keep it running for you.
Kubernetes has been cool. One of my places that I've been working a lot lately, and it's a totally mind-blowing what you can do with this, and for me it's one of my preferred ways. Talking about Kubernetes, public preview on AKS pod identity. So this is really cool. What is pod identity? Is the way that you can secure your Kubernetes with Azure AD. Done.
Exactly.
It's so so I would say it's so awesome. I'm really excited about this because it was one of the things that we could not do it, and now it is. It simplifies the RBAC, the role-based access control, to all the containers. It's really putting Kubernetes on a different level, because Kubernetes was only a platform, an infrastructure platform. And I'm sorry to steal a lot of what you're saying, but I'm really passionate about this, as you probably already identified, right?
Well, we know that you're passionate about the containerization, and it's really cool. What excites me, weird, but RBAC and Azure AD, it's so flexible. And this is maybe something that highlights, now this is in preview, I want to maybe say that, but this really highlights how flexible both of these technologies are and how the Azure teams are working so hard to bring all of these things together to make them so much more usable and manageable. And like you said, all we have to do now is configure the RBAC, configure the identities, and then we bind it to the container resources in Kubernetes, right? And that's how it's done, just like that. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. Now it's part of the role. That's it. That's
part
all you
of
have
the
to
pod.
do. You're good to go.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I think I repeat a few times on last podcast. I will never stop repeating. Preview means that you don't deploy in production. I just want to be on the same page.
Did you say that this one is in production?
No, in preview. You should play around, but you should not deploy these in production. I know that's a very exciting.
So we don't deploy.
No, it's not deploy. Don't deploy in production or with production workloads.
Oh, I got it. You have to remember it's my first week in Azure again, right? So
every single week is your first week, right?
You know what? Actually, this week it kind of does feel a little bit like that because there's so many new things. It's a bit like a kid in a candy store, I want to say, because it was tough to pick and choose what we wanted to do. But here we are. So let's keep it moving forward.
AKS, more resource view. So general availability of AKS. I think it was the week of AKS. We have 4 already announcements of AKS.
Oh, I think so, with AKS,
so far.
With Kubernetes involved.
So this is with resource view. So now developers can point and click, in this case on navigation, to see the live ones. Really cool. It was on preview.
Yeah, I haven't played a lot
now
with
you
it,
can
but
do
I
it.
really loved how you can do the drill down and the click through on the different deployments. And I've only played enough with Kubernetes to be very dangerous, to be honest with you. But as I learn more, and I think you and I will, maybe spend some time together over the Christmas season and the holidays, and maybe I should ask a guy I know about deploying CI/CDs with Kubernetes containers. So anyways, this one is in GA, and you can use this in production environments. And it's actually really cool. The resource view does make life a lot easier. But again, here we are, the push back to graphical in Azure. Really interesting to see where this is applying.
And this particular on Kubernetes is very easy to deploy, because you have a lot of good examples on the internet, and it's really easy to deploy. The most difficult part is the part to manage, and that is where the trick is, because deploying this, you can deploy like Andrew mentioned. Just click over here and we're deploying a cluster for you. Awesome. Really cool. But all of the things behind that on architecturing this, from the VNet standpoint of view, from the resource groups, from the access controls and everything else, it's a totally different world. And that is only the world of designing and architecting the solution. Now we're talking about the part that is after the implementation, that is managing. That is a different world as well.
Yes, moving everything into operations, right? So the operationalization. There we go. Too many letters.
Oh my
in that
God,
one.
we have to simplify.
Moving things into ops. But it's with Azure Monitor on there, kind of layered over top. It's going to allow better monitoring of resource consumption, which helps everybody deploying these solutions to make sure we're not ramping up costs and things too quickly.
Talking about that, public preview on Azure Monitor. I think I am too fast today. I think I drink too
No,
much coffee, and I apologize.
you have to keep me moving. That's a tough job all on its
Yeah.
own. It's at least a part-time job. But you're right. Another preview. So this one's in preview, public preview. Azure Monitor for containers has new reports tab and deployment live logs. That was really cool. I was looking at that. So it's a little bit about merging the last announcement and this announcement together.
Yeah.
Some things in production, some things in preview. I wish we could have kept these ones a little bit more in sync from preview to GA, but it's nice to know that maybe in a short amount of time, this one will also hit GA. I think it's going to be really neat because now we can see, again, visualization for Kubernetes with the node disk, the node network, the workloads, persistent volume monitoring, and visualizing everything is now just a click operation in the blade.
They are a little bit different because one is more for the developers, like the one that we did talk about it before, regarding the general availability of AKS resource view. It's more on the perspective of the developer. So now you can see after the deployment when you are developing the solution, you can see all of the resource that you are using and everything else. This is like the AKS is already, the solution is already in production. Now we need to monitoring. And that was another thing that we mentioned last podcast about monitoring Kubernetes, or I think it was 2 podcasts. I don't remember right now.
I think a couple of
but we already mentioned this, that the part of difficult of the Kubernetes is the part of managing and monitoring. Managing is not only like, oh, do I need to scale or not? Because then you can put some rules, some automation, and then it will scale up or scale down depending on what you're doing, right? But monitoring this to just seeing, especially live logs, because you can put a lot of those rules and a lot of, especially if you have, for example, now a little bit talking a little bit more technical, if you have, for example, load balancers, if you have other types of devices or other type of infrastructure, just monitoring if it's available or not, if you have errors on deployment, if you are redeploying that container in that pod or you need to move that, whatever it is that you are doing, this right now gives you all of that light. Like, I think this is more this is what I'm talking about, and showing again the public preview on monitoring containers report. It's more for you that you like blinking lights, red, red, green, the dashboards, right?
Right. The stoplights with red's bad, green is good.
Exactly. And this is a good way, because now we can starting to see that it's not only about deploying. We need to keep the things going. We need to keep running, and we need to keep always improving. And it's always come to the part that I love about Azure DevOps, that is the CI/CD, the continuous improvement, continuous deployment. Is that life cycle that I love. It's about this, because this is going to be our source to just improve and to just change. So it's not like you deploying and you forget it. Especially with Kubernetes, that, my friends, will never happen. So if you want to deploy something like Kubernetes to just forget it, probably you should choose a VM or something like that, because that's not going to happen. That's why I love about Kubernetes.
That's where you would deploy see, if you want to set it and forget it, you need to deploy a VM, put IIS on it, load your generally static site. Maybe you might have some .NET dynamic content in there, but that's about all you're going to have. Kubernetes is definitely intended for tighter code, first of all, but also a much more flexible deployment, right? So it's adaptive with the different technologies. You can change the frameworks that you're using inside of that, and you can do a lot more different things. And that front end doesn't care what you're using for data in the back end. It's a completely separate container piece. And that's the beauty of it. It's much more flexible, much more scalable, and you can push out many hundreds or thousands of containers. You think of big websites, how are they handling that? That's part of how they handle it is containerization, right? So you isolate the roles and push out many more containers to handle it, and let Azure worry about that infrastructure underneath to power it.
Absolutely. And talking about clusters, do you want to make the announcement?
Sure. So now in GA, infrastructure encryption for Azure Monitor, dedicated clusters now generally available. So infrastructure in the encryption at infrastructure level now provided for Azure storage. So data coming in to Azure Monitor is now going to be encrypted. It's encrypted in transit, of course, but now it's encrypted at rest as well within the storage account. And you can have, you can have it on Azure Monitor dedicated clusters. Really important because a lot of businesses, I think we talk once in a while about complex certifications like HIPAA, things like that. DCI PSS is another one that I've started dealing with one of my clients again. And these different certifications for security and safety of data really can be hard on operations staff to attain, because when you and I come in, we say, okay, we're going to do things this way, we're going to build it out like this, it's scalable, and then we always include the little list of except for,
like small letters, right?
So, right, we use the fine print theory. We're kind of buggers that way sometimes. Because we say, hey, use this cool feature. It hits 98% of what you need to do. The problem with these certifications is they look at that little 2% that it doesn't do. And we have to make sure that, when we say our data is encrypted 100% of the time, well, hold on now. Is it really? You have to validate those things, because that's what these certifications do. They have really smart people that come and they look at these things and they say, hey, Marcos, you're using Azure Monitor. That's really great. You even have a dedicated cluster to do your monitoring. Really smart. Problem is you didn't encrypt the data within that cluster.
But
that's what this addresses.
It is. Right? So it is. And the good thing about this is, if you read this and they say that if you deploy this from November of this year, right, this is already done for you. It's from now on, or this case, from November, since November, everything that you are doing regarding infrastructure encryption on Azure Monitor dedicated clusters, it's already encrypted. You can validate. You can see that there is a switch there that you can validate if your dedicated cluster in Azure Monitor it's or not using the encryption, what they call the double encryption, if it's enabled or not. And if it's not, you can enable it. It's a very, very simple PowerShell, or in this case Azure CLI, that you can use it to just validate that. Okay, so really cool announcement regarding that area, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's these little fixes one step at a time. Big improvements though, right? These small updates, big improvements. It's a crazy thing.
Talking about Azure Monitor, we have a new preview. And this is pretty cool. A new Azure Monitor agent, data collection rules, capabilities released in public preview. So this supports now Arc Server, what is really cool. Supports for the Arc Server, so Windows and Linux. Supports VMS and the installation via ARM templates. So the way that you can collect all of that data and all of those rules are really, really cool, right? And this is more your area.
Absolutely.
The areas of the blinking lights, the Christmas trees, the dashboards, right?
Yeah, so I like this stuff a little bit more, I have to admit.
A little bit more?
So I learned a long time ago, actually. Well, maybe not long ago, but you know what? Not soon enough, I would say. That if your work isn't fun, don't do it. you really you can have a bad day, you can have a bad week, and you may even have a month where you're involved, say, in a project that it can be extra challenging for lots of different reasons in life, right? But if you have 2 months in a row that are maybe more challenging, and I know I haven't done a Christmas mental health talk yet, but here we go. So it's important that we think about our own happiness and staying healthy. And sometimes you need to change things up. You can't always control everything around you, and sometimes you just have to kind of wait things out. But here's my little pep talk for Christmas season. If you need help, please do reach out. There's nothing wrong with asking for help when you need it. And it's something that's, as you know from me, Marcos, is very close to my heart. And if somebody needs some help, please, phone your local agency and ask. There's lots of free ones around Canada and the US and Europe. Areas that I know of. Always ask your friends, ask a professional, and reach out if you need it. It can be a hard time of year, and especially this year with these shutdowns and COVID, it's been really crazy. Lots of different turbulence this year and different factors weighing in. But yes, please consider that you must also be happy to be able to do a good job. You have to have a positive attitude.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely,
it's important. And I know for yourself as well, you I think it was last week you were talking with me about ASR, site recovery, and how they had a major update for Arc support in there as well. So we have multi-cloud, multi-premises abilities to reach out with Arc. Really cool stuff on its own. ASR, same kind of scenario. And in fact, I read, I've been too much time on Twitter this week, but I read a tweet from somebody who was doing a presentation for special MVP days, I think in Europe it was. And they said, they had a server under their desk with a VM cluster on it. And then they had a power outage. But guess what? The server was reachable in Azure, thanks to ASR. So it's one of those really cool things. And this is part of that, right? So Azure Monitor Agent, again, integration with all of these different things and the ability to move it into ARM templates so that you can just write your deployment once and then push it to many. Again, it's the scalability, right?
Yeah, exactly. Moving on to another one, and now we're talking a little bit more, changing subject to do databases and SQL and all of that. Announcement of in preview of the transparent data encryption with customer managed keys for SQL database hyperscale. So
that's a mouthful.
It is a very big title, and I had to look at the computer so I cannot say it wrong and speak slowly because it's a mouthful completely. So what does that mean?
Bring your own keys is a big deal, right? Yeah. What is bring your own keys about, Marcos? So we talk about the encryption keys. What does it mean to bring your own?
So you probably have your own device that does encryption keys. There are lots of organizations that they have those appliances that they do. It's called HSM, for example, that they do all of these encryption keys because they have like a way that they can do it and they can store that physically. So bring that into something that you already have into Azure and not using the Azure ones. That's what we're talking about, basically. So transparent encryption for using your BYOK, not BYOD, but BYOK.
That's where I went wrong. I did bring my own beer, but we'll stay away
that's
from
BYOB.
I get confused sometimes. I would love to hear a story. Yeah, you know what? If you have a story about the time that you heard or saw somebody who snuck a can of beer into the data center, go to Azure Centric and let us know in the comments.
Yes, please. we will invite you. We will invite you. We want to hear about all of those. And I have a couple of podcasts that we will have. I'm starting to prepare a lot of other different types. It's not going to be the weekly news. It's going to be like an extraordinary podcast, like we did. We had once that we talk about the subscriptions. We went that we talk about the Azure Bastion, and we had another one that was talking about. That's a very popular one about certification, for example. That is one.
That one was cool too. Yeah, we talked about a lot of different reasons around certifications, and a lot of people have big opinions on whether they should be certified or not, which for me is still surprising.
What?
I mean, I don't take a lot of tests, as you know, but when I do, it's a big deal, and I talk for a long time about it. Because it's I can study the material, I can do the things, I can go hands-on, but I'm not a good test taker. And for me, it's really cool, and it was a big honor this year to become an MCT because I really have been trying to deliver training to people who have the same challenges that I do. And I did get to work with a company this past fall where they had a lot of their in-house staff, and they were very apprehensive about taking the tests. And it was really good because now granted, we sat down in teams, but we did sit down together in teams and talk about, I may have this knowledge, and I feel the same way you do about taking these tests. And it's actually really cool. I think, that level of sharing and helping people through these things is really cool. I'm sorry.
Sorry for what?
I think I hijacked your conversation.
No, totally. This is normal. This is our podcast. We're just talking about SQL and we talk about certifications. And now guess what? We're going back to SQL again. But now with Private Link. So Private Link is one of the things that we already spoke last week as well. It was not related to SQL, if I'm not mistaken. But Private Link for Azure SQL Data Sync and Azure SQL Database, it's now on public preview. So that's a good thing.
That's a cool one.
It's good to see that we are moving all of these PaaS services, right? All of these serverless services, but we can reach only internally. So we can make those applications and make those services only available internal with the Private Link. Because those services...
It's really good stuff, right? It really helps to secure things. And even in the article, they talk about kind of government cloud. I know that there's been a big push in, at least in Canadian financial companies, that they're really looking at the scalability of Azure to help solve their problems. The whole pandemic situation has really been changing the way businesses solve problems. And I think, as weird as it sounds, I think that actually Private Link can help solve some of these challenges that especially finance companies have. And that's making sure that data stays only internal.
And it's not only that, it's trying to run away from what I see from this is probably a different perspective. Because if you don't have Azure, if you don't have Private Link, the only option that you have is to use a VM with SQL, right? So we're talking about not only the cost, but we're talking about the different type of management. We're talking about patching the server, patching the SQL, be able to doing all of that. The beauty of going serverless is not wasting time or wasting resources that they are perfectly capable, like for example you and me, to just relieve from those daily tasks that we can automate that, and we can leave to the other level to just increase or to just enhance the solution and application, the scalability, the performance, and everything else. That's where I see this going forward, because it's like I was listening to a podcast of the new millenniums, and they're saying deploying a VM with SQL, it's so 2012. I grabbed that expression, and I apologize if I'm not saying right, but I got that expression from that podcast of the millenniums, that they are saying right now. This is so 2012, and say, why 2012? It was my, and then I did a little bit search. It's that expression now that 8 years ago, and look at this, 8 years ago, it's really past. And I say, really? We have like over 20 years of experience of this. So I'm what, like the granddad of this?
Well, I know you're talking seriously about moving from infrastructure to platform as a service, right? And this is a good, serious conversation. But have I ever told you about the reason that I cut my hair so darn short?
No.
It's because I learned Microsoft Exchange. And one of the things I had to do was patch Exchange. And you don't only patch Exchange, as you may know, as a former Exchange expert yourself.
Not former, I'm still
I
am.
say former. You're still an Exchange expert. You just, we don't have to learn those things as much as we used to. But I was patching Exchange, and well, if you wouldn't know it, the cumulative update for Windows had a major conflict with the service pack for Exchange. I want to say it was a 2010 server. And I'm just going to say what we were doing was restoring. We weren't restoring just a piece of it. We had the Windows server. We had the other software that was on there, like anti-spam software, antivirus software, all these things. And then not the least of which was the bloody Exchange server software itself. But then we had all of the configuration. We had a big nightmare with certificates from a restore, as you probably have helped other clients with in the past too. Certificates. I don't want to talk. That makes me want to be my BYOB right now. But so the reason that all of these things kind of come together is because when I think of all of those headaches and having to cut my hair short because I was pulling it out so much, now we have Azure SQL. It's the same thing. So I had similar experiences with SQL servers as well. I've done lots of data work in the past as well. And when I think about Azure SQL, it's so much nicer platform, right? Moving from infrastructure focus to platform focus. Way easier on us as administrators, first of all, but it's also cheaper for the company, right? So they don't have to pay us to learn all these things. They don't have to pay us to sit and patch, and we simply just push it out.
And I have my hair short because I did spend a lot of times on Exchange, and the front part of my head, it's already without hair. That's why I cut my hair to just try to hide that expertise.
Yeah, so it's interesting because administrators, as we move forward in the world, we're going to have all of these different challenges as we go into the future. And they're gonna watch this podcast in 20 years and go, "Oh my God, you guys, what is wrong with you? Why would you ever?"
You are so 2012. So let's move forward because we still have a few updates to do it, and we are already being very long. So Azure Resource Logs for Azure Storage is now in public preview. So again, we talked about Azure Storage last week. Now this is Azure Resource Logs is on public preview. So really cool feature that we are talking about. The logs, they will provide a detailed information about what was successful and failed requests on your storage devices. And this is for the Azure Data Lake storage generation to Azure files and all of that. So very cool seeing that Microsoft is addressing that. And I'm absolutely sure that this is going to being addressed. And they already mentioned, I was just double checking, to the SIEM tool, in this case to Azure Sentinel.
Azure
That
Sentinel
is something
again.
that you are starting to like it, right? So you took my advice. So that's good. That's good about that.
Exactly. Yeah, I am getting into Sentinel a little bit, but I thought it was really cool with this update that they have the query and analysis experience with log analytics.
Yeah.
It's kind of parallel to Sentinel,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. Moving forward, and I apologize for getting these too fast, is Azure Repos. The new enhance and pull request experience makes everything so easy now. It's really easy.
Yeah. So this is your new world, right? So you do a lot of pushing and pulling.
I do all my blog posts right now, and all of this that I'm doing is regarding CI/CD. A lot of push, git commit, git push, and all of that is what I'm doing. It's so simple. I highly recommend do it. I probably will do some kind of exclusive not podcast, but exclusive videos about this, because it's really simple. You guys should start looking at that.
You know what I would like to do? I'm just gonna in the middle of this random podcast on the middle of the internet. Let's do a live event where you teach me about CI/CD. Let's take this learning to a new level. Let's do it live, and people can sit and laugh at me. How does that sound?
I think they already laugh at us, because at least we laugh to each other.
Really, he understands these complex concepts, but what's wrong with Windows Notepad again?
Okay, let's move on to the other one. That is Azure Storage, Azure Blob Storage. I think this is I think it's the funniest blog podcast that we do. We do a lot of laugh about this, but yeah. Azure Blob Storage NFS 3.0. Now it's supported on public preview for GPv2 version 2 in this case, right? Storage accounts. So good to know that our friends from the Linux world, now they will have blob storage with support, right?
Yeah, and there's a couple of kind of catches with it, right? So,
as usual.
So it's only available in, like we've said, not everything is always in every region. So in this article, please go read it. We're not going to list them. Go and check out and see what regions this is applicable to. And because it's in preview, you can, add this to your testing tenant or your dev test, whatever. And I think you request to have it approved for the preview, but that's okay. And then just keep it out of production, for crying out loud. But during the preview, the data that's actually stored is billed at the same cost as just generic Azure Blob storage, right? And I thought that one was nice. It's kind of a good bit of a gift for helping Microsoft test and vet all of these new features. But there you go. So, moving on.
Yeah.
I'm sad to say IE 11 will no longer be supported for Azure Portal as of the end of March of this coming year. So in about 3.5 months, I think, if my maths are correct on that one. The reason I think that I'm a bit sad to see it end, though I don't often use IE 11, we do have a lot of government clients and finance companies that still use Internet Explorer. Now, of course, everybody's been moving towards Edge for quite some time, but not all companies make it across the line before these deadlines. I did work with a government entity here in Canada, I'm going to say 3 years ago, that was still using, now hold on to your shorts, IE 8. And that was just a few years ago. That's been out of commission, I think, for over a decade now. But they had actually spun up a specific VM in their infrastructure just to publish out IE 8 so that their employees, their users, could use a in-house application that only worked with that version of IE. So there's different reasons for different companies and organizations that they're tied to this older technology. And it's easy to sit back and kind of have a bit of a chuckle. Use an IE8, ha ha ha. But, maybe it's going to cost billions of dollars to develop a new application. I don't know these things, but nonetheless, IE11 support's going to end, and we're going to move on.
Yeah, with the new Edge and the Edge that you have regarding that you have the possibility of having Internet Explorer compatibility. I think it will. So I know what you mean, and there are some companies that still have legacy applications that they require a very specific IE or browser version. But those ones, what we are starting to see, it's a lot of them. They have those application virtualization because it's not secure for them. It's only for using that they need to use it. They will use only for that purpose, and they lock down completely, and they are using a lot of the other browsers. But yeah, it's mentioned to that. Moving forward and talking about via Portal, and a little bit of the two past announcements, the Azure Storage Account Recovery, it's now available through the portal. So
in GA as well.
And in GA, in GA. That's the part that was missing. So if you delete the storage account in the last 14 days, you can go there onto the portal and say recover. So you are secure. And this is a very, I know that we already passed and we are already on our record podcast in terms of length, but I just want to tell the story that I had a client that called me say, hey Marcos, and when they starting to be very nice at the beginning, it's because something happened.
Oh, okay? Yes.
let's be honest. And say, hey Marcos, how are you today? How is your family? And someone say, okay, everything is okay. So what happened? Say, we have a trainee here that he just basically, how I can say this, delete a resource group in production.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Oh boy. And that resource group was with storage accounts. So, yeah.
My first question is, were the storage accounts covered with backups configured?
Yes, of course.
Oh, that's a very good thing. But now it's even easier though, right?
Yeah, now it's even easier because you can recover that. Although it's like the guy was crying, as you can imagine, because he's a trainee, and that's the dangerous part, and that's why RBAC. That's why I was so excited when we talk about the Kubernetes pod identity, because it's really important to have your RBAC that. So trainees, they should have free view, but all of the deletion process should be on a different account. That's at least when I'm doing the Azure Foundation, it's what I recommend to do it, because it's just for leveraging this type of situations, right?
Absolutely.
To moving.
So one of the battles you and I have fought in businesses before is RBAC, and you and I are both very big supporters of RBAC, but companies for some reason still resist it because it can be a little bit of difficult, first of all, but it's also a bit of overhead because you have to classify different tasks into the roles with RBAC.
Absolutely.
So yes, I totally admit, full disclosure, it's going to take time, and you need to get HR on board. You need to have people from different departments on board and translators to make sure that they take it from task to role translation and all these different things. But it's really worth it because you can define things. Why not have different tiers of administrators, not just giving different permissions all over the place? Why not define roles? And then you can onboard new staff in stages by moving them through the roles.
Absolutely. So moving on, talking about geek stuff and talking about performance and talking about announcements. That's what we hear. This is a very, very new announcement. Intel SGX based confidentiality computing VM now available for Azure Decade. We talked about this a few podcasts ago. Okay.
We did, yeah. We talked about confidential computing.
Yes.
And how, again, it ties into the whole kind of security certification and the push of full end-to-end encryption. So if you're trying to process, say, medical data, you want to make sure that, first of all, you're using Azure dedicated host. That way you're never on a shared system. That you have encryption in transit, encryption at rest.
Yeah.
I think Azure Storage can help with that as well. Azure Monitoring, you can now monitor your hosts and know and be assured that all of that data is being encrypted and that it's transparent. That's the thing I think is actually really cool with Azure. A big company like Microsoft, but such granular transparency about security. Really important these days.
It really, and this goes to a news that they released that I was very curious to see that Microsoft, that was recent, Microsoft now gains the certification of super secret or top secret for for US government. So it's like, and now it's like, okay, so now they are allowed for all those agencies with 3 letters that we don't want to mention to not trigger any type of harmless to us.
We encourage all FBI, CIA,
NSA,
whatever else CSIS in Canada, please subscribe and follow our podcast.
Just to see if we say something that we should not, or if it's top secret.
Let's reach out to the law enforcement community here.
Let's say now RSMP and whatever it is, right? But they are.
Oh my goodness! Anyway.
They are already now top secret. So, if I'm not mistaken, is the first cloud provider that now they can run all of those workloads that is top secret. And that is the toppest of all of these confidential computing and all of that. So it's not only applicable to healthcare, but for the government as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and it's about that end-to-end security, the commitment to security from Microsoft, and again, that I joke, but law enforcement is actually an area, again, part of where I had some of my grounding in IT, and it's really important for those agencies because they're quite often not only underfunded, but the IT staff in law enforcement is under all kinds of different pressures, and they have to deal with things that you and I, thank goodness, don't have to deal with. They get really messy investigations, and it can be difficult, right? So one of the cool things about the confidential computing update is Microsoft, I should be specific, Microsoft's commitment as example use cases for confidential multi-party data sharing, fraud detection, anti-money laundering, blockchain, all these different things, right? Intelligence analysis. It is a big deal because in the modern world, there's so much data. And we talked about this, I think, near the start of our podcast. Seems so long ago. But we talked about how it's easy to get data in to storage, but it's hard to make it meaningful and make it easy to consume for humans. So for me, this is just part of it. It supports that, and it's generally available, right?
Yeah. Last but not least, and it's a very long podcast, automatic VM placement.
I think we're 25 minutes in, aren't we?
A little bit more than that. Just tiny bit.
I should use a timer. I actually don't use a timer because I don't like to feel pressured. I want it to just be me.
Exactly. I don't. But automatic VM placement on Azure Virtual Machine scale sets available for dedicated hosts. So again, this is starting to get all of that very good cloud providers, in this case Azure, or all the things that they're doing on the normal one, but for dedicated hosts. So if you want a dedicated host, now you can have virtual machine scale sets available. And this is in general availability, right? So you can accelerate your deployment using scale sets. So scale sets basically is nothing more than you have the high availability on the cloud. It's not because you have a VM on Azure that you are available. Now it's my turn to be dyslexic.
Words are hard.
Yeah, oh my God, yes, don't tell me about it. But this is the way that you can increase the dedicated host with high availability as well for your VMs. And it's really cool, and it will work in conjunction with dedicated hosts. So it allows new capabilities, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's part of, like you said, not just scalability, but the flexibility, right? So scale sets allow us to define maximums and minimums. And it's just going to bring another subset of awesome features to the dedicated hosting in Azure now. And again, we think about that last update with, new security features and things. We're really targeting government agencies and finance sectors for not limited to, but certainly thinking of those areas in particular with all the security improvements. But we also want to make sure that we have as many logically applicable features within those dedicated hosts as we can for those clients, so that they take, like you said, full advantage of the Azure infrastructure and features. We want them to use the features and services, and this is part of that. So lets them more easily manage the applications, and they can scale them up. But again, just a cool improvement, another small update. So I think, I don't want to guess, but have we made it? Did we make
this
it?
was the last one. So we are ending our podcast. So once again, thank you so much for, if you are reaching this point, and if you read all of, or if you listen and viewing all of this, so thank you, because it was a very long podcast. We had an immense fun to doing this. Probably you already saw that. So right, Andrew? But
absolutely, yeah, we have a good time doing
absolutely.
this. And I think this is one of the things I look forward to every week. I have to be honest, but it is also a lot of work. So don't forget, like it, subscribe, and tell your friends. And if you're in law enforcement, also tell your friends. I know Marcos, you always follow all the speed limits.
Every time.
Nothing to worry about, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. I have the button there on my wheel that is the most used button, that is the speed limit, because I don't want to have any issues with law enforcement. I love them. They are here to protect us. And I really appreciate it.
I use the cruise control a lot too, but I don't use cruise control in the winter. And I wanted to say that because if you hit a slippery patch, don't use cruise control.
I'm not saying cruise control. I'm saying speed limit. It's different.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, you see, your car has different features than mine. Mine's multi-mode. It goes and
I did make the firmware update.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So thank you so much for you that are listening, and you reach the end of this record podcast. It was way beyond what we were expected, but with all the news that was this week, we could not miss it.
It was a big
We took a few out of our agenda, but I think we cover what is really important, at least for in our perspective, for you to know. We talk about that. We talk a little bit about more about how that could be applicable to your organization and to you, to see if that is something that you want to explore or not. Please subscribe again to our podcasts, to our channels, to our social media, to just see the news, and to just have other content as well. Don't forget to subscribe or to just follow the Azure tracks. That is for my good friend Andrew Lowes. You have a great contact.
It's a cool site.
you have a great content as well, and let us know what we are doing good or bad. We just want to hear from you. If you have funny stories that you want to talk about it, we could create a podcast only for that. We want your participation. We want you to become the star of this show. This is
I would love to hear the comments for next week about people sneaking soda or whatever liquids into a can of beer or something into the data center.
Yeah.
I know because usually when you go through, especially in a shared hosting environment, the security is pretty strict
about liquids. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much once again, and see you next week.
Thank you so much, Marcos.